Hey everybody, Rhode here. I think I'm live now. I can't really see anybody. If somebody could maybe type me a message. I want to see if I can get the chat to come through and see if we can get any chat message to work. All right, so I got the cue that we are actually live. Sorry about that, you guys. Once again, my name's Rhode. I've been in the industry for a long time. I actually went to the Aveda Institute in Minneapolis in 1997, and kind of Aveda's been a big part of my career all throughout my entire journey, and so it's kind of an honor to work with you guys. I know I've been to the school before and did some hands-on stuff with some of you quite a while ago, I think it was. But today I'm going to be going over, some razor work. They also asked me to talk a little bit about disconnection, and I think disconnection and razor work are a couple of my two favorite things to teach on. And if I'm not mistaken, I think you guys had Gerard do some razor stuff the other day too. And I've known Gerard for a number of years. He is actually incredible, phenomenal, and I'm going to guess that he was using a straight blade. I'm going to use more of the Feather Stylist razor. So Feather makes a bunch of different razors. He was probably using the Feather Plie. This is the Feather Stylist razor. I'm not going to get into that too much, but I'll kind of get into the functions, why the razor can be important, and try not to go over too many things you probably already went over with you a couple days ago. But I really want to touch on a lot of disconnection things. So I feel like disconnection is like a crusade I've been on for about the past 10 years. And it's almost, I feel real passionate about it. Without disconnection, applying disconnection into your shapes as you guys grow and you get better and you start to learn how to build shapes. All right, so I think we're back. It booted me off for some reason. But things what I was getting into was about really disconnection and how if we don't begin to incorporate elements of disconnection into our everyday work, I think we're going to really be left behind. I think it is so crucial and so important to creating almost all modern shapes these days that if we don't apply the elements of disconnection, you're kind of really stuck in a pretty tight box that stifles your creativity and doesn't really allow you to create and be as creative as you really could be when applying disconnection. And I always say that the first rule of disconnection is you don't talk about disconnection. And so the idea, meaning with that is you have a lot of times it doesn't matter. I think one of the most unprofessional things that we can do behind the chair is really let the customer and our guests dictate to us how to do our jobs. And that just really cannot happen. I think that's crucial that we end up taking control, having good, thorough consultations, But then after that, really how we choose to create our process and how we choose to create our looks and our styles and our overall shapes, really up to us, down to, it's none of their business what tools we use. If you want to use a razor, if you want to use, your clipper, you want to use your scissor, you want to use your thinning scissor, that's really going to be up to the professional, because those are professional technical things. So if we got too many cooks in the kitchen, and you got your customers kind of tell you how to do your job, that makes it really difficult to be as creative as you can be. Now, at the same time, it's really not our job to force our creative will onto our customers. So the idea is having a good, thorough consultation, and then meeting those needs and meeting those expectations. The rest is up to you. Anything that comes that's in the professional scheme after that, tools, techniques, anything professional, is really up to you guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up doing a bob shape for you guys. I'm going to use a razor. I'm going to apply a lot of different elements of disconnection within that. We're going to end up doing some dry cutting on top. So we're going to kind of break a whole bunch of, what you call traditional guidelines. I wouldn't even call them rules, because there's not too many. There's things we learn in hair school which are super important, because we have to learn the foundations of how to build shape, how to stand, how to create, clean lines, how to make clean sections. But then after that, wheels can come off the wagon and you can create shapes however that you want. So for the shape that I'm going to be creating is actually going to be using the Feather Stylist razor. Now this is what some people would call more of like a stick razor. That is where the blades are built. The guard is actually built right into the blade. And if you can see, I think you guys can see on here pretty good, there is two sides to this. So there is a side where the blade is exposed, and then there's a side where the guard is in front of the blade. Now what I've found and had the best luck with is that you want the exposed part of the blade facing towards you. So when you go to cut hair, the first thing that touches the hair is actually the guard of the blade. I find it slides and you get a real nice smooth cut out of that. I'm going to show you a few different hand positions that I actually use when holding the razor. But for what we're going to do first, so I'm going to go through here. I'm going to remove my desired perimeter length, and how I'm going to go about doing that is I'm going to be in my first position, which is going to be overhand position. So basically all you're looking at here is that my hand is over the razor. I always try to make sure I use a lot of water. Another thing that's really good for doing razor cuts and keeping the hair moisturized is the Nutriplenish spray. That leave-in is incredible for doing razor work. The idea with any razor work is I always try to just have a consistent moisture content in there. I will razor dry hair if I feel like it's going to achieve the shape I'm going for. And I'll razor wet hair. What I try to stay away from is a combination of the two, because where the hair is wet, the razor is going to slide and cut better. Where the hair is dry, it's going to actually drag and do a little bit more work to the cuticle. So when in my overhand position, so I got the guard touching the hair first, the exposed part of the blade facing me, I'm going to go through, because I want kind of a shattered finish here. One, if you want your perimeter, when all said and done, you want a shattered, broken perimeter, I really encourage people to create that while they're creating the actual shape. A challenge that can be a huge time waster and be counterproductive to what your end goal is if you know you want a shattered perimeter, one of the worst things you can do from a timing standpoint and just from creating your shape is to cut a blunt line where you want it. So if you cut a blunt line into your desired length and then you go to try to shatter it out later, well, usually you're either going to be running late because it takes you so long to do that, or you're going to be an inch or 2 inches shorter than what you originally intended on being. So I like to put in the texture, the brokenness, while cutting the perimeter, as opposed to it being an afterthought. So I'll try to move closer here. How I'm going to go about doing that is I'm going to grab little sections of hair. And with each one of these little sections, kind of just like a little lock of hair, I'm not going to pre-twist it, but what I am going to do is I'm going to take in the inner pad of my thumb and the inner pad of my pointer finger, I'm going to roll these pieces of hair back and forth, 180 this way, 180 that way, while simultaneously going up and down with my razor strokes. So then what that will look like is this. So then when you're done, you get a real kind of shattered, flared out finish to each one of the locks of hair that you get. Now this is what we actually want to go for. It might seem tedious and it might seem like a lot of work, but it's a big time saver at the end of the day because I'm not going to have to go back and do more work to this perimeter. So the key here is rolling it back and forth while simultaneously making longer strokes with your razor to remove your desired length. So you get something like that. Now what you want to be cautious of is that you're not taking really short strokes with the razor, because if I was doing little strokes like this with the razor, real tiny, I'm going to create more of a blunt, a real blunt line here. Or if I was trying to move too quickly, let's just say I was grabbing my lock of hair and I just cut through it too quick and I didn't let the razor do the work, I'm also going to get another blunt finish. So you want to take your little locks, not too much hair, roll it back and forth while letting the razor do the works with the longer strokes to really get that broken, shattered perimeter. So as I continue to the other side, the goal is you're kind of visualizing your perimeter as you put it in. Razor cutting, I would highly recommend the earlier you are in your career, the more comfortable you get with using the razor. Because if you spend the first 10 years, even 5 years of your career not using a razor at all and just using your scissors and doing more straight line cutting work, well, you're going to get really good at judging your work and judging your haircuts based on those straight lines that you're putting in. And so then when you go to utilize a razor, well, that's not the point of the razor. So you're going to have to be able to shift from judging your work by looking at straight lines to when you're using a razor, you need to be able to judge your work from back here, taking a step back and just looking at balance and symmetry. Because if you went through all those little pieces that I cut, if I went through and I tried to flatten this out and get them smooth, and then I was like, oh, well, that's a little longer, that's a little shorter, and I went through and I tried to even those out, I would just completely defeat the purpose of everything that I just did. So when doing razor work, it's really good when you can judge your work with balance and symmetry, just looking at the shape, as opposed to when you're using a scissors and cutting straight lines and just looking at your straight lines. So I'm going to move on to the next side. And if anybody has a question, I do have the chat screen it should be working. So if anybody has any questions, I would try to keep an eye on that and fire away. I'm still waiting for a question. Somebody at least let me know it's just not broken. So as I finish this side, I'm trying to go through, making sure that I mimic the exact same long strokes with the razor, trying to make sure that I'm not grabbing really large locks of hair in one section and then really small locks of hair in the next section. So that's really what we're looking for, just a nice, broken, shattered perimeter. So then with the perimeter complete, now the next thing that I'm going to do is I want to remove some additional fullness back in through here. One thing that you're going to notice throughout your entire career, your existence of cutting bobs, is that there's going to be a big triangle in through here. There's going to be a lot of weight, and a lot of people have tons of weight because they leave that weight behind the ears here. And it's because when they're working back here, they're either over-directing and purposefully leaving a bunch of weight, which can cause a problem, or they're just not removing or committing enough to the interior layers back in through here. So I did get a question through, at least on my watch, if it would make a big difference if I took a bigger lock of hair or if I took a smaller lock of hair. And yeah, if you take too large of a lock of hair, then what ends up happening is you're going to sit there working on that lock of hair, and you're shattering it, and if the lock of hair is too big, you're pulling it from so many different directions. By the time you're done cutting it, it flares out, and you're getting these longer lengths. So I try to keep those locks pretty small. Everybody's hair density is going to be a little bit different, so I can't tell you, well, it's this length or this width. So the idea is you only want to work with enough hair. You shouldn't have to sit here and grind on these for too long. So small enough to where you can work through them pretty quickly and cleanly. So a really good question came in too. When do you prefer to use a razor over a scissors? And the honest answer for this, part of it depends on my mood that day. So like, if you got a customer that you see all of the time, and you know you want to do something different, and you just like, I'm getting bored, I need to do something different with the hair, I might grab a razor just to do a different approach to the haircut for my own sanity. Now, erasers can function to the point where they can cut clean straight lines, but if I'm going to cut clean straight lines, I usually prefer to use one of my scissors. If I want to create texture and movement and some pieciness, more of an organic feel, that's usually when I'm going to lean to my razor. I teach a lot of razor work and a lot of razor cutting classes, but even then, for how much I actually use it and to teach it, I'm probably only using it 30% of the time when actually doing customers and clients. It's just kind of the toss-up, I always encourage people to get really comfortable with all of the tools that you have in your arsenal. So then at that point, you're able to tackle any new trend or anything that might come in. So I'm going to go through, so for my next little phase here, I'm going to take this section. Now I want to remove a lot of this weight in through here. So I'm going to take this vertical section, I'm going to pull it straight out so it's parallel to the floor. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch to pencil grip. I was just in overhand grip doing the perimeter. Now I'm going to switch to pencil grip. Now this is exactly what it sounds like. You're writing with a pencil. Now the huge benefit to that is when you go to take your sections, and I'm usually using pencil grip for section work, is you're going to get the smoothest, most efficient cut out of the razor blade when it is laying fairly close to parallel to the hair strand. And being in pencil grip allows your elbow to be low, the blade to be resting close to parallel to the hair strand, and then I only have to move 2 fingers to get the blade moving. To whereas if I was still in overhand grip, my elbow would be this high, and then my razor, I would have to either move my wrist or my whole arm to get the thing moving. So, but when in pencil grip, I can take my section, lay that blade pretty parallel to the hair strand, and then I'm going to take this corner off. We'll move to the next sections. Now I'm going to pull each one of these sections straight out from the head. At no point am I going to over direct anything back. I'm going to follow head shape the whole time with this. Knocking that little corner off. Now when I get to these corners here, this is where it can make people real nervous not to over direct hair back. But we have to think, what's happening when you over direct a bunch of this hair back? Well, you're going to leave a lot of weight underneath here. Now sometimes you need to over direct this hair back depending on the shape that you're trying to create, depending on the density of the customer's hair. But like I touched on earlier, one of the main issues people will be faced with when creating bobs is that triangle shape. So I find that the more weight you can remove back here behind the ear, the more freedom you have when this hair falls over it to not sit out like a big bell. So I'll try to answer another question while doing the other side here. All right. So another good question was how often do you replace your blades? And here's why the razor a lot of the times gets a bad rap. It's because people don't, there's not a ton of razor education. So honestly, just this week alone, you guys have had more razor education in your short period of time than most 20-year veterans have ever had. And I'm not even joking. Like, that is, to have a class with Gerard and then me, and I'm sure you're going to have some other really great educators, to have that much razor training already, it's unheard of. Because the razor gets a bad rap. People are afraid of it. They don't know how to use it. And a lot of the times they'll blame the razor for not working properly or for damaging or shredding the hair simply because they don't change the blade enough. So long story short is, if you're going to do a whole haircut, you need to change your blade every single haircut. And I do something that might be a little unique, which I can recommend for people to do. Because sometimes you might use your razor and just do like a tiny little piece of a haircut, or you might use it for the whole haircut. Well, I have a red-handled razor, and I have a black-handled razor. I don't have it with me right now. The black-handled razor is one I know I just barely touched a couple pieces with, so then I could probably use that blade again. The red-handled razor, every time I touch it, it needs a new blade. And these aren't that expensive. The actual tool itself is like $45. You can probably find them for even cheaper. The blades are what's expensive on these, where the one Gerard was using was awesome because the blades are less expensive, but the tool itself is more expensive. So here's my underneath. This is going to be my perimeter down here. I'm going to drop these next two sections. Another question was, do you ever have a fear of cutting too much off with the razor? And I'm sure I probably did at some point. I don't really anymore. I try to make sure that consultations are thorough. And you kind of talk about with your guests exactly where they are comfortable with all of their lengths falling. So when it comes to consultation, the most important thing that you can be 100% sure of is where they want their length. Because if you mess with somebody's length, you're messing with somebody's comfortability level. You mess with somebody's comfortability level, it doesn't matter what shape you create, the haircut's not going to go good. Because you've already put them in an uncomfortable position as if you did cut the hair too short. But if your consultations are thorough and you're having a convo with your guest, and you come to the agreement before you even shampoo that they want their hair to right here, well, all you got to do is simply cut their hair to right there. And yeah, you do have to, it takes a little bit of time to get familiar and comfortable with the strokes of the blade and how it functions. But after a couple times using it, I think a lot of that fear goes away if there's a thorough consultation. So next phase, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to overhand grip. I'm going to grab these little locks of hair, do a little twist, and I'm going to be matching up my underneath perimeter. And I'm still pulling these down more into gravity. I'm not pulling them out because I don't want them to create much graduation and start to stack up on me. Now what I'm going to do is, because I do want to create a little bit more length in the front. I've got to this point here, I'm about 1 inch behind the ear. I'm going to start taking each one of these locks and over directing them back here behind the ear. So every one that I cut now is getting pulled back to the same stationary spot, about 1 inch behind the ear, still doing the same technique to remove the length. But then in turn what you get is you just get a real nice angle that moves forward just because you over directed everything to a stationary guide. So I'm going to come to this side. I'll repeat this side. So as far as another question came in was, how do you get your clients to switch up and to maybe use a razor? Honestly, I don't talk about it. Like if I'm going to, after we've had a thorough consultation, and I know where they want their lengths, and I know the shape that they're looking for, I don't talk about what tool I'm using. I start doing my job. And that can freak some people out, you know, mostly the stylist more than anything, but you have to assume that people that are in your chair, that they trust you. And so one quick way to lose trust is doing a nice thorough consultation and then asking a customer, do you mind if I use a razor on your hair today? That's not cool at all. You have your thorough consultation and then you move and you actually go right to whatever professional tool you're going to use because you're the professional and it's up to you. So that's how I get them to switch. I don't talk about it. Then what you might end up being faced at some point is somebody might be like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Don't razor my hair. You know, then you can have the conversation like, Linda, honey, listen. Like, okay, Karen, settle down. You know, I'm going to use a razor because this is the look that you're going for. This is the shape that we talked about. In my professional opinion, this is the best tool to get you there. Thanks, bye. And then usually from there, that's enough said. And, you know, as harsh or stern as that might sound, that's actually a really good way to actually build confidence with you and your customer because they know you're not going to take any, you know, nonsense from them. Because I usually find that there's two types of customers. There's one group of customers that sit in this chair, and there's a group of customers that sit in this chair. They both say the same thing. This group of customers that somebody cuts, anytime something new is done, they say, oh, that's new, what are you doing? This type of customer here, Karen, needs to speak to a manager, and she'll be like, that's new, what are you doing? So who's the common denominator here? Well, it's actually the stylist. I find the clientele will get away with what you let your clientele get away with. Meaning that if you let these people walk all over you, tell you how to do your job, you're asking them permission to use certain tools, and it's like you're looking for their approval. Well, if you think they're bad, they usually end up bringing their friends, and their friends are even worse. And then their friends bring their kids, and before you know it, you quit and you're done doing hair. To whereas if you stand your ground and you're professional the entire time, and big part of being professional is being able to tell somebody no. And no, we're doing what I'm doing, what my professional opinion is. And then you end up breeding a clientele of excited people that end up, every time you learn something new, they want to be a part of it. They're looking forward to the education that you're getting and forward to the new trends because they know you'll be able to tackle a lot of the new stuff because you're not afraid to try new things. Hair doesn't stay stagnant in the same for years and years and years. So sometimes you better know how to use that razor because in 5 years you might really need it. You better really know how to use, you know, all kinds of tools. All right, so next what I'm going to do, that I've established my perimeter for this shape, I'm going to switch to actually the peeling technique. Now this is going to be where you're kind of holding it overhand, but then we're going to use it to where you actually are peeling the hair off. Now I think a lot of times when people attempt this, they feel like you have to push your thumb on here hard to cut the hair. You are barely touching this. The only thing your thumb is doing is holding the hair in position enough so you can twist the blade and then get it almost parallel to the hair strand and then lightly graze the hair off. If you're pushing really hard with your thumb and you're trying to twist and turn it, you're going to end up shredding the hair. So it's a very gentle twist and peel movement, and the only thing your thumb is doing is holding the hair in place. All right, so for this approach, I'm going to take these hair strands, I'll take a vertical subsection, I'm going to pull them straight up in the air. And then as long as some of my perimeter drops out here, as soon as I see some drop out, I can go through and I'm going to cut straight across. So we're going to want to go pull straight up and then cut straight across. Now here's the beauty of cutting straight up and straight across, is after you've done that, what you've done is you've created a really nice angle that is angled this way, which really encourages the hair to actually collapse and wrap back around the head shape and really lighten the amount of density that's in through here. So I'm going to move to the next section, begin working around the back of the head, not over-directing anything, just traveling guide until I get to the spot where I began to over-direct the perimeter back. So that was about 1 inch behind the ear. Somebody asked if razor cuts are easy to maintain at home. Well, they absolutely should be. Now, if you have a customer that comes in and you had a thorough consultation, and if you're using a razor, my guess is that you tried to create some nice organic lived-in texture, meaning that's the shape that they should be trying to style it in, or just kind of letting it live in. And so, yeah, I think they should absolutely, and they are absolutely easy to maintain at home, as long as your consultation matches the shape that you actually created, which also matches the home care that they're trying to do. So if you went and you created a super textured bob with lots of movement in it, and it had just a kind of a real organic feel to it, and then they went home and then tried to style it completely different or smooth it out 100%, it might not behave the way that you actually designed the cut. So you always want to make sure that your and your guest's expectations are on the same page. So what I do want to touch on now is that I am beginning to over-direct these sections back, and I'm over-directing them back to about 1 inch behind the ear, still pulling it straight up and cutting straight across. Question came through, how many techniques do I typically do when I'm doing a razor cut? I'm trying to show you the 3 main ones that I do, or at least there's this kind of 3 technical approaches. 1 being the overhand grip for doing more of my perimeter work. 2 being the pencil grip for when doing more of my vertical layering work. And then 3 being the peeling when I'm doing more of my overhand layering, like either through the top of the head or as you're seeing me do right here through the middle part of the head. So usually about 3 different broad range techniques, I would say. And so I'm going to repeat that on this side. I will continue to just follow head shape until I get to about 1 inch behind the ear here. Then I will begin to over direct these back. All right, so that was the spot to where I was going to over direct these back. So as you can see, the shape's starting to unfold here. We've created a nice angle going forward on both sides, and we've removed a lot of the density that is in through here. So actually what I'm going to do next is I'm going to try to quickly blow dry this. I know that's not the funnest part to watch, and maybe the mic can be muted. I'm going to quickly try to blow dry this, and then I did leave this top dry. I've already dried the top, and it's flat iron smooth. So I'm going to do the entire top of this haircut by sculpting the shape, and I'm actually going to move to a dry cutting scissor next. So I'm going to dry this quick. I've already got some Nutriplenish in there. All right, so I did get a question, do I normally drop or dry the top right away? And the answer is it just depends on, the shape that I'm trying to create. Really, the importance and the point I wanted to drive home with you guys today is you can use a razor. You can implement disconnection. You can cut hair dry if you want to. Now, what I've done here is this shape in the back here, we didn't touch on this, but this haircut, this piece, this underneath layer is not connected to this at all. The only spot it's even kind of connected is because when we dropped the perimeter, and the perimeters were cut in a very similar spot. And then as far as, you have to also be able at times give yourself the creative freedom to cut the entire top of the hair dry if you want to, or any part of the hair. So what I'm going to do quick is I'm just going to run an iron through here just to make the ends a little crispier. So what we're looking for when all said and done is a nice shattered perimeter with lots of movement in it that doesn't look like a big triangle. All right, so before I move to the top, I'm actually going to do some cutting in through here, and I'll kind of fill you in and give you guys some updates about what I've been currently doing. So for the past, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years, I've been on the road, and like on an airplane every Saturday, almost every single Saturday on an airplane, going somewhere, people's salons, teaching somebody something. And I just got to a point in my life to where I really needed to take a step back from traveling. I have a family and everything. And so what my wife and I ended up doing is we created the Rhode Professional Academy. And the Rhode Pro Academy is based in Minnesota. It's not far from the Mall of America. Obviously, nobody's traveling anywhere at the moment. But at that academy, when things go back to normal, hopefully sooner than later, what we do is we host a lot of classes. So we have, academy classes. There'll be one-day classes. Sometimes there's 2-day classes, really revolved around doing 3 haircuts in with each one of those classes, hands-on work. You're doing 3 haircuts on one mannequin head, so it's basically a destination point for where people can come take education. Another big part of the Rhode Professional Academy is our Rhode.pro website. So on our Rhode.pro website, you can sign up for classes. Even if you're still students, we still take students. Another thing we have, though, which we're really super proud of, is our Rhode Pro Designer Scissors. So we have a line of designer scissors that we came out with, and these ones I'm going to use now are the dry cutting ones. You can see they're kind of goofy. They got a wide shape to them. Now, what makes a dry cutting shear actually work really well is when the interior blade, so if you can see the interior of the blade, is bowed. Because dry cutting scissors are meant to slide, push, and cut at the same time. That's what makes them go effortlessly through dry hair. Whereas if you tried to take a dry cutting scissor shaped with an interior blade like that and cut clean, straight lines on wet hair, it's actually going to push the hair. It's not going to function the way that it should. So whereas if you use them properly on dry hair, and I'll show you the different techniques I do for that, they just flow right through the hair. Now, one thing that I'm doing for you guys, and you guys only, that are watching this class, is right now, and then obviously money's tight for everybody, but what I did, if anybody is in the market for any scissors, you could go to Rhode.pro, and I created a custom code just for the Madison school. So it's, if you typed in Aveda Madison, all capital, all one word, as a discount code, it knocks $125 off any scissor that you want. So they go from $325, you get them for $200. For only $200, you get a really good pair, and these are the scissors I use all the time. The Rhode Designer Scissors. So if you're in the market, and clearly not many people are working, but I wanted to do something more dramatic in case anybody was in the market. So it's a $125 discount code for that. We do have some combs. The brush that I was using also is on there. So it's just another place that you can pick up good quality professional tools. But that enough being said, I'm going to go through, finish this haircut. So what I'm going to do next is there's 2 main techniques that I like to do when using dry cutting scissors. The first one is sculpting technique, and then the second one is a slide cutting technique. Now, the main differences between sculpting and sliding is when you're doing a traditional slide cutting, you can see you usually only have one blade on the interior of the hair, and then you're kind of going through, you're cutting through the hair, and what that's going to do well is it'll kind of create some gaps and separation this way. But if you want to actually remove fullness in bulk, that's when moving to the sculpting, to where you have both blades on the exterior, lightly pinching the work that you're trying to do, just sliding just like butter through the hair, removing any additional unwanted weight. This is the first thing that I like to do. Remove the bulk first. Now, clearly, we don't have a ton of triangular shape here. We got committed in that nape area and removed a lot of weight, which is a great thing to do, because then when you go to this part of the haircut, you're not having to do 2 more haircuts. So then after I've gone through and did my pass with sculpting, removing any unwanted fullness, then if I want to go and create some separation, then I will go through and do more of a traditional slide cutting. 1 blade on the interior, 1 blade on the exterior, and then what that's doing is it's fanning it out this way. All right, so I'm feeling pretty good about the amount of density and the amount of separation I'm getting through here. I'm now going to drop the top. I might have to run the iron through there a couple more times to get any bend out. So I'm just going to run an iron through there real quick. One question that came through was, have I ever done any celebrities, or what is my most memorable part of my career so far? The only celebrity I've ever done, none of you probably even know who it is. There used to be a show called Cheers. Norm from Cheers. This is the only celebrity that I would consider that I've actually done their hair. Besides, the runway models at Fashion Week. Did Fashion Week a good handful of times. It actually wasn't my favorite thing to do. But some people just love it. And the great thing about the Aveda Network is it gives you a good opportunity to try to get in there and get your hands on some Fashion Week stuff, which I'm sure your educators can tell you all about. But I would say my most memorable part of my career so far was when I got to be one of the headliners for Aveda Congress, the last Congress that we did. I was able to incorporate my family. My son stole the show. My daughter was on stage. I got to bring my wife out there. I got to really showcase some of my employees at the salon that I co-own in St. Paul, Minnesota. So I would say that was it. That had always been like a goal of mine. From the first time I ever saw a Congress hair show was to be one of the headliners for it. I got to do that. It was incredible. And I'd say that was it. That was the peak so far. So now to finish this shape, you can see all I'm doing is I'm taking these remaining pieces and literally eyeballing and just sculpting my desired length in. Another question came in is, what do you charge for a haircut? Now, I actually don't take a book of clients like at the salon at all, and I haven't for about 6-7 years. So the people that I still cut, they're usually friends, family, and a bunch of stragglers that I haven't been able to get rid of for about 20 years. And so I don't really keep a solid book. And pricing really has to do with your availability, how busy you want to be, what location that you're in. So I would say, if you're going to do, the highest I ever charged was in downtown Minneapolis, and this was over 10 years ago, and it was like $65 for a haircut. Now, if I still was there and I, still kept that job, it'd probably be close to $100 now, I'm guessing. But really, sometimes people can get lost. They can turn into like price queens and then think that price is really everything. Really it has to do with how busy do you want to be. Let's just say that if you want to, men's hair is something that I really focus on a lot, that I educate a ton of. And if you want to have a really solid book of men's hair clientele, you're kind of capping on price, especially depending on your location and just depending on the competition that is around you in your area. I've ran into some people over the years. They're like, my men's haircuts are $80. And I'm like, well, how is that, guy? Because you have one client. If it's just not a huge market of guys that are going to spend $80 a haircut, especially, you know, we're in the Midwest too. Now, of course, there's exceptions to the rule everywhere. You're going to hear people over your career like, they charge $600-700 for their haircut. And I'm like, good. I mean, I wish I could do that. I don't live in that world. And usually that ends up being, you know, a much bigger city than a lot of the Midwest that we live in, and really just supply and demand for the individual that's doing the haircut. So I'm doing a little bit of face framing. Even though I did an angle bob going that way, I still want to open up the face area just a little bit, just to push it back, but still have it longer in the front. I'm looking at questions. Oh, another part to that question too was how much time do you book out? Now, timing's one of those things that I always enjoyed having an hour to do my female clients. I don't know that my haircuts were any better than when I did them in 45. I did enjoy the hour, but you got to make sure that your pricing accommodates those extra 15 minutes. So let's just say you try to hit $1 a minute. Well, you're charging, you know, you better charge $60 for that 1 hour. Or if you're going to book on the 45s, you could charge less for your haircut, do more customers, but then you'd be doing it in a tighter time frame. I noticed the importance of timing more when I was doing men's haircuts, though, because I found that I spent 10 years booking on the 45s for my men's haircuts, and I found that if you give me 45 minutes to do a men's haircut, I'm going to do it in like 48. But if you give me 30 minutes to do a men's haircut, I'm going to do it in 29. It's a different mindset. Like when I know I only have 30 minutes to do something, I'm very efficient. I get what needs to get done without just the kind of just messing and fluttering around with the hair unnecessarily. Getting the job done, not cutting any corners, not skipping anything, not lessening the quality of the service. It's just go time. So sometimes it might just be like a mental game that you'll have to decide for yourself. All right, if you give yourself 45 minutes, are you more efficient? Or if you give yourself an hour, are you more efficient as long as you're charging, you know, according to your timing? What else do we got? I think somebody throw some more questions out. Because right now the last thing that I'm going to do for this shape is I'm just going to go through. Whoops, daisies. I'm going to check underneath and do some very deep point cutting, touching up the perimeter. Somebody already bought some scissors from you guys, so I appreciate that, and you're going to love them. I'll get them sent out ASAP. That either means you weren't paying attention, though. So you're doing, somebody did awesome and is in trouble. So thank you guys very much. So you can see, that's kind of the overall shape here. Very shattered, textured perimeter. Even though it's inverted towards the front, we still tried to open it up a little bit with a little bit of face framing. And once again, we went from having this nape area that we cut is completely disconnected from these two midsections that we cut. The perimeters were somewhat similar. And then lastly, this top section was way longer than everything else and is also not connected to this. So if we were to go through, I'm not going to take this hair and hold this out. We got one step here. That's not connected to this. This is not connected to that. Now this is where it doesn't need to be some big secret. If you know you might have a customer in your chair that's like, what about this piece? Or what about this piece? You don't have to pretend like you didn't do any type of disconnection. You can always let them know that based on their hair texture or their desired shape that they wanted, I'll let somebody know that, all right, you want to do, let's just say somebody wanted a nice inverted bob, but they had 7 heads of hair that you're having to sit and cut out to get rid of that triangle. I'll let them know that I'm going to have to take this underneath here shorter than this, so it's easier for them to style, it looks better, and it grows out better. So when they are going through it, it won't be a surprise that, oh, this is shorter, this is longer. You can be completely upfront with somebody and just let them know. Just you don't want them to tell you how to do your job. I think we had another question come through. Do you typically put a side part or how the client normally has it? So it would always be, I try to make sure that we have a thorough discussion about where their part actually is. Now, what I would really encourage you guys to make sure that you don't get caught up in doing is playing the game of like, oh, well, do you want to just cut it down the middle so then you can part it wherever you want? That is false. That is a bad move, especially the shorter the hair gets. If you tried to create a shape like this, and you cut it down the middle, well, then you went to part it on the side, it would be a completely different shape. So I always try to go based off of their part. I says I have 1 minute left, and it says, what is your advice for a student who wants to get in the film industry and hair and makeup artist? I have no idea. I don't do that. There are a lot of people out there, though, on Instagram that you could probably reach out to and give you some better information. Well, thank you, guys. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you learned something from this. And check out Rhode.pro if you ever need any tools or anything. I know saw one of you already did. Appreciate it. Hope to see you guys again on one of these. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay away from people, I guess. Thank you, guys.